more you do it, the more you discover that you can develop this beautiful two-way communication with the horse. The art of relationship before the art of results, because we didn't want to get pressure release training. And then I decided right then and there, I don't know how I have to train her all the traditional things like riding and lunging and whatnot. I will find a way. And that's what I did. And if I don't know how, I will just pause until I do know. Parents bought a helmet and a whip because that was advised by the riding school. Okay, a helmet to keep your child safe. But a whip is designed to inflict pain without inflicting injury.
So many huge debates in the equestrian industry. I've heard many a row, many a debate about whether we should be hand feeding our horses and giving them treats because it makes them bargy and bitey and nippy and badly mannered. What are your thoughts?
Do you often feel like the odd one out at your stables because other horse lovers don't understand that the bond with your horse is more valuable than a ride in the arena? Well, Sandra Poppema is the founder of the HippoLogic Clicker Training Academy and a horsewoman from the Netherlands with a unique training approach. Her mission is to help horse people like us enhance the friendship with our horses by teaching us to use positive reinforcement as a two-way communication system, building mutual trust and understanding and strengthening the horse-human bond. So how can we learn how to be a good friend to our horse? And how can we use treats in our clicker training without creating greedy, pushy horses? Let's find out, shall we, with Sandra.
Sandra, welcome to Curious Equestrian.
Well, thank you very much for the invite and thank you for having me.
Now, you've got to tell us, where did your passion for positive reinforcement begin?
Oh, that's in my childhood. I loved horses. Yeah, when I was 12, there was a neighbor. We lived in a city, but there was a neighbor that had a horse trailer. So we always played detective, like, would this man have horses, you know? And then finally we figured out he might have horses because there was always straw and hay laying on his driveway. So one day we were brave enough, my neighbor and I, and we knocked on the door, we rang the doorbell and we asked if we could take care of the horses or see the horses, or I don't know what the question was. I was so nervous. And we could see the horses and we kind of never left. So they became our free lease horses. And I just wanted to be loved by a horse. And these horses were very, very distant from people. They just didn't like people so much. So we were just there every Saturday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. In awe, just watching them and getting to know them. And then in the summer, they just went to the pasture and they were like, yep, we have been in the stable for 6 months. So you are not going to get me. So we had to be patient. And when you're 12, you have all the time. You can sit in a pasture for 4 hours until the horse comes to you. And then we were so honored, you know. And then later in my riding lessons, I learned to use the whip and I learned to kick them forward. And all the things they taught me, like don't let them win. The horses were not like that. They were not like, oh, I won last week. You didn't catch me. No, the next week was a new day. So if I behaved more friendly, then they were friendly. I just wanted to become friends, and that didn't work with a whip.
And now in your sessions, Sandra, you've developed a really unique method and technique for working with horses, and particularly those of a sensitive disposition and those who have been rescued and have difficult pasts. But what would you say your positive reinforcement reinforcement sessions look like now in your sessions?
Well, first, like now I do everything with positive reinforcement. I've been doing this since 1999, something like that. So, like in the beginning, I just started with tricks and I didn't know much about it. Um, and now I cannot even go back to traditional training with pressure release because I just changed my whole mindset. So what does it look like? In the beginning, you teach your horse that the marker signal that pinpoints the desired behavior is followed by something they want to have, an appetitive. Usually it's food because that's usually the easiest. You don't have to work with food, but since I'm teaching and I'm teaching online, it's so much easier to say like, yeah, let's use some food. And the what I discovered when I started training horses at the BC SPCA to get more experienced, because in Canada they were not that open in 2012 to positive reinforcement horse training. So, and the BC SPCA was, so I trained their horses. So I could train with a lot of rescue horses. And what I discovered, what was really surprising to me, because with traditional training, usually the horse really listens the best to the trainer, and then you have to wait and see if they will do it for other people just as good.
Yeah.
But with positive reinforcement, the behavior and the choice of doing the behavior is in the horse. Negative reinforcement with pressure release. Usually the horse gets in a responsive mode. And if you don't apply it as good as the trainer, and a perfect example is that horses in riding schools, when they are ridden by a really good rider that can apply pressure release really, really good, the horse is lovely. But put a beginner on the back, and that horse doesn't want to go forward. But with positive reinforcement, the behavior is more in the horse. And since they have to do the behavior first and then have to wait to see if it gets rewarded, so it will be reinforced in the horse, it's the horse that starts to offer the behavior more and more. And that's what's so different about it. So in the beginning, the first few sessions, you learn, you teach the horse that a click means this is desired behavior. And then they quickly start offering that behavior more and more. And in the beginning, I also thought this is about the food. But even if you don't have food, they still will do the behaviors for you. And um, and then I discovered, I think it's more and more about the choice that you give the horse. Because if you give them really a choice, it was really a choice. It's not like if you do this, you get a treat. If you don't, you don't. No. If you do this, you get a treat. If you do something else, you might get something else. Then there's also the food. Usually you don't have to work for the food. There is food available. So it's not like, okay, make them hungry, what they suggested in dog training in the 90s. Make sure they're hungry because then they will walk for a treat. No, it's the opposite. Make sure that they are well fed so they don't have that anxiety and the need that that's a trade-off. Like you're hungry, so I have control about the food. It's not like that if you do it well. And the more you do it, the more you discover that you can develop this beautiful two-way communication with the horse. Because if he doesn't want to do it, that is super valuable feedback. Because then you can ask, why don't you want to do it? Is it because something else is more reinforcing? For instance, you want to trailer load your horse, but the grass next to the trailer is way more reinforcing than the trailer. or he doesn't want to leave his friends. His friends are more reinforcing. Or doesn't he want to go in the trailer because he's afraid of the trailer? So by his feedback, by not going into the trailer, and you pay attention, you get a lot of information about what your horse is actually thinking. Of course, there's a lot of guesswork, but we become good guessers when we pay attention, and horses too. They will become good guessers. Is this what you want?
And
So
is
yeah.
Sandra, is the positive reinforcement, is it always in the treat, or is it in praise and love and affection? Is it in scratches? What do you use? What techniques do you use?
It's not always about the treats. And in positive reinforcement, once the horse is after a few sessions, depending on the history of the horse, I found that more and more the choice is really something that motivates them. If you start working with horses that have um, a background of negative reinforcement, so pressure release and also punishment, some horses are really afraid to offer behaviors. I was a member of a Yahoo clicker training list, and it was all in English, and it was all scientific English, and I was not good at that, and I was too afraid to ask questions. But I had two friends that my mentors, they became my mentors, that translated the scientific English to Dutch
Oh,
in
wow.
normal day-to-day Dutch, and and I was also doing Pirelli, and I was doing Pirelli, and I got the results very quickly. Pirelli is based on pressure release, the natural horsemanship, and but they had a system, and that was so beautiful. If your horse doesn't want to do X, Y, Z, go back to booklet number 5, bullet point 3. I'm like, that's what I need for positive reinforcement. So that's what I've been working on since then. Um, so some horses in the beginning, because I worked with a lot of rescues, I noticed that some horses don't want to dare to offer behavior because it has been punished. In like one of the things that you see natural horsemanship people or teachers do is that if the horse walks away, the horse gets yanked on the lead rope, and with the rope halter, which is pretty harsh tool, it inflicts pain um, or severe discomfort. Um, so they're scared to offer behavior because it has, in the traditional way, it's usually punished. Your horse is standing still, he walks off. No, it's not allowed. So now you have to teach your horse that there will be no repercussions, no punishment, and and you have to entice him to start offering behavior. So it starts really small, but after a few sessions and pretty quickly, between 5 and 10 sessions in general. And the sessions are very short, about 5 minutes. So within an hour or two, the horse discovers that he has a choice and that he cannot really make mistakes because there will be no punishment. But some horses, they are they are suffering from learned helplessness. So they are so shut down, or they're so traumatized, then then you have to really open them up with more food and more treats. But in general, I find it very, very interesting to see that the food is a reward, and it reinforces the behavior, and it's an entry point of the communication. Once they understand that they have to do and they get something in return, then they start offering behaviors. And if you don't punish your desired behavior by not giving a treat, they you discover that some horses are really inventive, and they come up with all kinds of ideas. And if you think like, oh, you're laying down now. I want that in the repertoire. I just click and treat. Bam, it's in the repertoire like that. Then you only have to add a cue on it so that they don't lay down whenever they want, but preferably whenever you want. So yeah, it is about the food, but it's some horses love scratches, some are not that motivated by food, but in
Yeah.
general, horses eat 16 hours a day. So in general, their food
They
is the
are.
easiest thing to work with.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because I know that different dog breeds and also obviously different dog personalities can be less or more food motivated. I remember um, we lost our beloved collie not long ago, but he was absolutely wonderful and so intelligent and loved trick training and loved to learn to roll over and stay and to stand on his back legs, and he absolutely loved his trick training. And he wasn't food motivated at all, but he loved to have that engagement and that connection, obviously being a working dog and having the brain for it. Whereas other dogs like our little beloved Labrador Heinz 47 mix, she was so food motivated and, would be all about getting that treat. And I was going to ask you whether do you find that some horse breeds are more motivated by food than others? Is there a sort of link at all, do you think?
Well, I have found that like, and I don't want to insult anybody, but what we call in the Netherlands the cold-blooded horses, like the Fjorden horses, Frisian horses, Irish cobs, they usually are very food motivated and they don't care that much about pressure. So if you're doing natural horsemanship with those kinds of breeds are more likely like you go ahead with your training stick. I'm not moving. And they drive their people crazy because negative reinforcement, pressure release still works, but then you have to up the pressure to a point where you as the owner who loves the horse just can't, because and that's a tipping point for many horse owners of those breeds, that they start to look like I just cannot use the whip that much because now I really know this is level 4, this is hurting, but I don't know what else to do. And then they find positive reinforcement and they discover a whole new personality of their horse, that the horse wants to work with them and for them, but create a win-win. But I haven't really come across breeds that are not food motivated, but I have come across individuals.
Yes.
But there are like food motivated horses and then super food motivated horses almost, and then individuals that don't care. But I think the difference between a dog and a horse is that a horse is meant to graze 16 hours approximately a day, so they need more food, lower calorie, high fiber, where dogs it's just they can do with one meal. At least I know. I don't know much about dogs, but I know many dog people feed the dog once a day, and I was like, that's not enough, is it?
Yeah.
But
they're not grazers. Yeah, exactly that. So I was going to ask, does positive reinforcement with treats, do you have success with every horse you work with? Do they all want to give you something in return for that treat?
Up until now, and there's no guarantee for the future, yes. However, I worked with a very, very traumatized mule. And I never worked with a mule. I always find those individuals, or they find me. I don't know what it is. Anyway, I find that mules, you couldn't approach her at all. She was food motivated, but her fear was way higher on the survival importance than food. It took a really, really long time. I never got to hand feed her or touch her, but I did get I managed to train her to take deworming
Oh,
because you can
wow.
do that from a distance. You don't need to touch the animal. But the thing with positive reinforcement, what I like so much about it is that you get to learn the individual. Because if they don't like, I don't know, special horse food or carrots, you try something else. So that already teaches you what they love and what they don't. And when I trained my wild horse, Kira, she didn't eat carrots and apples because you don't find that in a nature reserve in the Netherlands.
No.
They eat grasses and branches. And so she was like the first few weeks, she was like, you eat the carrots to her friends. I'll see if you die. Oh, you survived. And that's the way that she did it. She, in the beginning, grass pellets, she didn't even touch that. It took a few weeks before she said, like, oh, everybody's eating that. Everybody's surviving. Okay. So it's so interesting
Yeah.
that a horse that grew up in the wild, she was 1 year when I got her, that they have these survival mechanisms. And I thought I never tamed a wild horse, but the Black Stallion books, it was on my bucket list to tame a wild horse. I never thought I got the opportunity living in the Netherlands,
Oh,
but her mother was an export pony that they were keeping for grazing purposes in a nature reserve. And then my friend had an Andalusian stud farm. One of those stuff
boy.
escaped from the herd. So yeah, that's how I ended up with a wild horse in the Netherlands.
Wow. And what was that experience like working with a wild horse for the first time?
Well, scary
Mm.
because I was pregnant at the time when I say yes to a wild horse.
Wow.
And I also had a miscarriage. So I didn't want to be in danger. Like,
Wow.
no. So I'm like, you know what? I just decided I am going to do this with positive reinforcement. And I don't know how exactly. I had like 10 years of experience, but not with, I never tamed a wild horse. So I decided to do it with positive reinforcement. That was like a few months in when she told me, like, no pressure. So that was my pivoting point. I can tell you more about that. But so yeah, because I was pregnant, I was like, she was not that tall. Her mother likes more ponies, so they're not super big. And her father was a big Andalusian,
Oh,
but if they're
wow.
wild, they're strong. And
Mm.
she was so fearful. She tried to climb over the wall of the box,
Oh,
the
gosh.
stall. But she was not tall enough. But that's how scared she was. If you open the door, she tried that, and in panic,
Oh,
full mode panic. So yeah, that took a few weeks, but only 3 weeks. And the reason I know it's only 3 weeks is that I started my blog, because I started an online training journal to just
oh,
keep track, because I never tamed a wild horse. I thought this is maybe once in a lifetime opportunity. I want to document everything. Yeah, so that's how it started. And then I did everything with positive reinforcement, and then I took her to the arena where I started to doing really, because I had results with Pirelli method. And then one day I was doing what's called a circling game. I was just blinded by the results I got. But if I think
wow.
now how horrifying like how hard it is to do those small circles with a training stick on this
Mm.
end and a rope on that end. Anyway, because I taught her to lay down already. We did trick training and all that. And so she could lay down. And one day I was just doing the circling game, which is kind of lunging, but on the 3 meter long ropes, very,
Mm.
very small circle. But then you have a lot of control. So it makes sense in a way. And she didn't want to trot, and she was stiffening up, and she had this very stiff legs. And I was watching her face, and she had this face, and I was like, okay, I'm just upping my game here, which is not really game at all. Anyway, but then I believe that. So, and then I'm like, yeah, and she's still not going. And now I'm at this point where you have to do, I don't know, level 1 pressure, level 2, and up. And I couldn't do it, but I was threatening her with the training stick. If you don't do it, and I saw something change in her face, and she was like, I'm laying down. And I knew immediately, first of all, this behavior has been trained 100%. Second of all, she was very young. So I'm like, you are so vulnerable by just laying down from a trot, like boom, laying down. I'm like, what a risk you're taking by offering a behavior that is, and I'm just getting goosebumps by how brave that was to say, I don't want to be pressured. And I remember, of course, I went to her, and that, like, I talked to her, so she got like, I don't even know if I got like a treat. Probably not, but like pressure was off. And then I had this video in my hand, like fast forward this movie, like now she's 1. And yes, she's 1, and I'm doing something. Now she's 1. But what if she's 4 and I'm starting her in the saddle and she finds it too much pressure because that's her opinion, and she's laying down? That wouldn't be safe or convenient. So I remember she was on a boarding facility. I was on my bike. I had to bike 6 kilometers to home. I had only one in my mind, like this was her feedback. She didn't want to get pressure release training. And then I decided right then and there, I don't know how I have to train her all the traditional things like riding and lunging and whatnot. I will find a way. And that's what I did. And if I don't know how, I will just pause until I do know. So yeah, that was like a big decision. And from that day on, I'm like, I don't know how to train your horse to go sideways with positive reinforcement. I will figure it out.
And thank you so much for sharing that kind of story, because you have to have an element of bravery to look back and reassess and reevaluate and change the way you're doing things, and actually say, wasn't too happy about that, but I'm going to change direction. I'm going to be flexible. I'm going to learn. I'm going to be open. I'm going to be humble. And then also, not only that, but to share the story with us and our listeners, giving us all the chance to look back and sort of reevaluate our training sessions and what we're doing and what we're happy with, and actually what we'd like to change. And actually, a lot of these conversations are happening now where we're all reassessing and thinking, oh yeah, things like what you were just describing, the circling game. Is it really a game? Is it really fair? Is it really what we want to be doing? And we all have that opportunity with our horses, don't we, to kind of stop in our tracks and change what we're doing.
Yes, we do have a choice, and we do have the opportunity. And like, I have given this so much thought, because this was in 2010 and I was already doing clicker training for 10 years, but also doing Pirelli for about that same time. But I also was a riding instructor back in the Netherlands. And I realized that the struggles people had in the saddle were not from a lack of knowledge about riding. Everybody knows the riding aids. Like, we all know that. But why does our horse still doesn't want to go into the corner, in the scary corner, or doesn't want to jump, whatever? So then I moved to doing groundwork, because I discovered that there was a lot of communication going on and a lot of myth. Like, he is pretending to be scared. But what I saw was, I see a scared horse. And I don't believe that horses are that well of actors. They respond to their environment, and they give you very honest feedback. So then I was doing groundwork lessons, and because the natural horsemanship method that I was using had all these steps and booklets, it was very easy to teach other people. But then in the Netherlands, it was in the north of the Netherlands, in Groningen, there was a lot of Friesians and Fjorden horses. And like I said, those horses didn't really respond. So I felt that I had to pressure some days the owner to use more pressure to get the results. And that didn't really sit well with me because I could so understand that you love your horse. Why do you want to use that much pressure that it's really aversive? Um, but then again, I did the same thing. So I wondered so many hours, like, why? And then my motivation was I wanted to be like a real horse person or a good rider. And then you have the thing that if the authority says, do this, you do it. If the instructor in the arena says, use your whips, use your more leg, he has to listen. I did it because I wanted to be a good rider. I wanted to be a real horse person. I don't know what it is, but that's that. And then when I came home and I was like watching the freeze horses in the field, if we tried to ride them and use the whip like we were taught, the next week we came with a halter, they say, bye. And so that was my struggle. And I see that in a lot of people. Like, it's hard to change your ways because first you get the results with special release. It's very easy to get the results. And the results give the person a status. I can control the animal. And that's very enticing status. And when I discovered natural horsemanship, I thought this was it until I started to realize, because at the same time I was doing positive reinforcement, and my first pony, when he saw the pink skippy ball that was my target, he came run at me. And when he saw the targets or the training stick, the carrot stick, he was like, nope. So to him, it was nothing to do with carrots. It was just a stick. It was just a stick. He was like, bye. So that made me think. So for me, and I know, like, oh, the natural horsemanship, it was fantastic because there was all these steps and it worked and it got me the results. And then I could teach it to other people. And then like the positive reinforcement, the kicker training didn't come with a method. So I had to develop a method, like what am I doing and stuff like that. So when I deep dive more and more in positive reinforcement, I thought I will not make this mistake, what I did with natural horsemanship, because with natural horsemanship, I thought, this is it. I will never change. This is perfect communication. I believed all the marketing, befriending your horse and whatnot. I was like, okay, this is positive reinforcement now. I'll keep my eye open because maybe there's something else, which is even better. Because my drive was always to befriend the horse, to communicate, to be honest with the horse, and to develop this relationship. That's why I have horses. That's the main reason. So yeah, it's very important to listen to
That is
what
so
the animal
beautiful.
has to
And
say.
I love that, Sandra, because on this podcast, we've had many a conversation about how do we identify our relationship with our horse? For so long, we've all described it as horse and owner. And now we're seeing a sort of a rise in people saying, actually, I'm quite uncomfortable with the word owner because it's suggesting that this beautiful, essentially wild creature that we've domesticated is ours and it's our possession. And actually, that's incorrect. But then it throws up the question, well, what are we? Are we their guardian? Are we their caregiver? Are we their mum? Are we their friend? And I love that you describe that relationship to you is so important as a friendship. And I think that's just lovely, because it's so different to hear that. You know, I can't think of anyone else who would say, oh, my horse is my friend, other than, funnily enough, my mum actually has always said that our horses are our friends. And mum describes that, and she has with all of her animals and her pets ever since she was a child, and would describe that her rabbit was her friend. And I just think that is so wonderful, to change that narrative and to change that label, if you like, from, you know, owner to friend. And why do you think it's important for you to use that title, or that relationship status, if you like?
Oh, well, then relationship status comes from I really did a lot of self-development, and I dug deep to find my values.
Mm,
Um, and horse welfare is my number one value in training. So if it doesn't benefit the horse, it's off the table. And I have like 5 values that are very, very important. And I use them in difficult situations. Like sometimes people come to me and they say, like, my horse needs a farrier now, and I need to train him now, because his feet are due, and we have to do it. And maybe there's no time for this positive reinforcement. And then I just look at my values and what I can offer in that situation. And then I'm like, does this horse really need his feet trimmed today? Or
mm,
maybe we have 2 weeks. It's maybe they're not like, and then we have 2 weeks to start training and to do the best we can. Um, but sometimes in emergencies, we have an emergency. So yeah, positive reinforcement or welfare. If it's life and that situation, you do anything, you know. And
mm,
usually in emergencies, there's no time to train. Although you can do a lot to make it easier. Like sometimes you can use food instead of a twitch, because I do believe that's better for the welfare of the horse. But sometimes, yeah, you need to use a twitch on the horse in an emergency, because there's also safety for the vet and for yourself and for the horse. But I found that I don't need a twitch anymore.
and isn't that true? I love that I'm waving my pencil. But haven't you just nailed that in terms of life as well? If you've got your values and your morals, whether it's with your horses or in your, you know, your wider life, whether it's in your career, whether it's in your social life, it maps the way for you, doesn't it? And helps you make decisions and find direction. And isn't that the way that actually we can apply a lot of this to our horsemanship, but it spans across the rest of our life as well?
Yes. And once you know your values, I can tell you it's easy to have values when
Mm,
everything goes smoothly. It's
mhm,
in the moments where you need your values the most, that's where it's difficult. Those situations when you have a farrier and he starts hitting your
mm,
horse because he pulled back his leg and he smacks your horse. That's the moment where I learned to say, don't do that. Here's your
mhm,
money. And then call somebody else who does the other 3 feet. Because that is so, so scary. But that's what I promised my horse. Your
mm,
welfare is my number one. So if that means that I have to be standing up to you, which I sometimes find very difficult, because you know the farrier or the vet is a person with, you need that person
mm.
for the welfare. So yeah, there's like some conflict there. Like it's a stranger, but it's also the professional. Um, so
And you
yeah,
have to
that's
be
where you
brave.
find
It's that courage and that
you
bravery that
have to be
comes,
brave.
yeah, that comes actually,
But the
you
thing
realize you
is,
have to stand up for your horse.
the thing is, you can sleep at night.
Mm,
You were rude to that person, or maybe you disappointed that person, or whatever.
mm,
Um, but I'm now like, you know what? You get your full price, so you didn't show up for nothing, but you're fired.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's super scary. And then I want to say something about like, yeah, what do you call yourself? Because it's culturally different. In the Netherlands, we usually say boss.
Oh,
You're the
yes.
boss of your horse.
Yeah.
Uh, and words are super important because they trigger feelings. If you call a horse Storm, or I don't know, some bad name,
Mm.
it triggers something in your unconscious. So I'm very nomen est omen. The name is the sign omen.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and actually it's gonna lead, it's gonna direct, isn't it, how something plays out. If there's a negative name or there's a negative title or a negative use of words, that's gonna channel into the relationship and the training session. It's gonna have a knock-on impact.
Exactly. So I like horse guardian. I like that word.
Mm.
And then when I moved to Canada, it's and the whole like horsemanship world says leader.
Mm.
But when the marketing says leader, they usually mean boss because a
Yeah.
real leader has followers. And a leader doesn't have to control the herd. A
Mm.
leader is the leader, and 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 the herd wants to follow the leader.
You're right, because even in families and friendship groups, you will have a natural leader, not who is ruling the roost or laying down the rules or dominating everyone, but they just have that infectious energy and charisma and maybe a bit of wisdom that everyone chooses to follow. And that's so positive, isn't it? And that's like a natural herd or pack instinct. Much better than boss. Yeah.
And then there's also something like the horses don't really have one leader. It's like if you
Mm.
look into the horse behavior, that like usually the pregnant mares decide, I'm wandering off because I'm thirsty, I'm going to look for water. And then everybody said like, oh, that's a good idea. But for other decisions, other horses in the herd make those decisions. So it's more like, yeah, whoever takes that role
Mm.
on in that
Yes.
moment, and it's very environmentally, because all the behavior is triggered by the environment. Not
Mm.
all, yeah, all. You have internal environment, hormones, and an external environment. But if you see it in that way, yeah, like the leadership role we do, like I like guardian because I don't have a better word, and I'm not
Yeah.
an English native speaker, so I don't know what the word guardian um, triggers to most people.
Mm.
Caretaker seems a little bit distant. Yeah, here's your diaper and your food,
Yeah.
and I'm off.
Yes.
But yeah, for me personally, I really want to do everything to be a good friend, to
Mm.
protect them if needed, and vice versa. Sometimes they tell me there's something scared there. Let's get out of there. This is not safe. And when you listen, you stay safe.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's
it's
so
it's
true. And Sandra, I've got to weave us back round to talking about the treats and the positive reinforcement, because this
oh
does
yeah.
strike up so many huge debates in the equestrian industry. I've heard many a row, many a debate about whether we should be hand feeding our horses and giving them treats because it makes them bolgy and bitey and nippy and badly mannered. What are your thoughts on this? And have you ever experienced that where a horse has become a bit too much and a bit headstrong because of the hand feeding?
Yes, of course, because food is so motivating. And
Mm.
if we reinforce undesired, dangerous behaviors, we get what we reinforce. So
Mm.
that's one. Second of all, sometimes people come to me and say, like, when can I stop using treats? Think about this. Have you ever gone to a riding school or an riding instructor, and the first thing you asked was, when can I start riding without a whip? When can I start riding without a bit? No. When can I train my horse at liberty without a rope or a training stick? Nobody asked that. But when it comes to food, when can I stop feeding the horse? So that's an interesting thing to think about. And we have to know that, so in general, I start with what I call table manners for horses, because table manners is etiquette. And just like we humans, if we are toddlers and we see a table full of food, we run to the desserts and we start to eat because we're hungry. We want to eat the good stuff. We have to learn to take a plate, to use cutlery, to sit down while we're eating. All these rules. And that's why I call it table manners, because it's not natural behavior. In the nature, there's food all around, if horses are lucky, and they don't have to wait, or there are well, there are rules. But in general, if they see grass, they can eat grass in pasture. But now we have to teach them. I have treats in my pocket, but you're not allowed to touch me. You're not allowed to self-serve, and you're not allowed to bite. So with positive reinforcement, because they are so motivated by the food, you can simply teach them to use their lips only, not their teeth. You can teach them not to mug you or touch you or sniff your pockets, because I will reinforce polite behavior. And polite behavior is learned behavior, just like we humans is not polite to run around in a meeting and screaming. But maybe we have the urge to do that if we haven't learned as toddlers, as young humans, that it's not polite. So that's the second key lesson. Your key to success that I train is you have to learn your horse to be patient. You're not getting the treat right away. You're getting the treat. There are rules. So that's the foundation. You teach your horse the rules. Mugging is not allowed. I want you to be do the food etiquette, table manners, and I want you to be patient. So that's where you start. And some horses are the food triggers too much, so you start with lower value, maybe even just normal hay. They also chew longer on hay, and the chewing relaxes them. So there's all kinds of things that you can use. And maybe some horses are just not ready for treats. But yeah.
And Sandra, I've got to ask, you've got a real passion for working with rescue horses. How do you transform the broken, inverted commas, and traumatized rescue horse and reverse those terrible, terrible things that humans have done to that horse and actually rehabilitate them into a whole, healthy, happy horse once again?
Well, first of all, you don't have to do everything with positive reinforcement, because not everybody has gone the same path as I have. So, but even if you do a little bit of positive reinforcement, it can change and heal the horse. So even if you do just like trick training or a little bit of target training, that already can make a difference. Because what was so amazing when I worked with the rescue horses at the SPCA is that I noticed that they didn't only trust me, but they started to trust other people as well. And that was something I did not expect, because in the positive reinforcement, you allow choices and you give them back control over their own body. Because how many times, I would say almost always, is it us that says, I want to clean your feet, give me your leg now, this is how long, and we do it now, instead of saying like, are you ready? No, are you not ready? No worries. I will ask again in like, because we determine everything. We determine what what they eat, how much, the time.
Mhm.
We determine if they are in a stall or pasture. We determine, we choose their friends, we choose their mates, we choose if they mate. We control basically everything. And if
Mhm.
in training it's the same, but if we have like a part of training where we can say, you can choose, it really empowers them. And if they are shut down because they have the feeling, learned helplessness, and that means that they think, no matter what I do, I have no control.
Mm.
I've worked with one horse. He was so extraordinary. He was so shut down. So he was the perfect riding horse, because people mistakenly see that for obedience. But if you see that the horse has no joy at all,
Yeah.
he just does whatever, then to me, like, all the fun is gone. But I had
Mm.
to train him to touch a target and to follow a target so I could bring him to the pasture. And every time I trained him once a week. Um, I had the feeling that I had to start all over, that he
Mm.
had forgotten. Normally, that's not the case. They're like, I don't know what to do. Oh, I see the target. Oh, I remember. But
Yeah.
this horse was just like, he was so afraid and so shut down. That was, yeah, besides the mule that I worked with, yeah, the most severe
Mm.
horse that I worked with. But even him, he came around, but it took time.
Thinking about that, Sandra, one, do you think we need to be more patient with our horses who have had really difficult backgrounds in terms of even horses that are sold? Some are sold from pillar to post, even if they've not come from a rescue background. They've had a traumatic ordeal being passed from pillar to post, not staying with one family for long at all, and then moving into a different home with different training techniques and put into different environments. Do we need to be more patient with the horses that come into our livery yards and our riding schools? That's the first question. And also, how does it feel for you with horses that actually you feel like you can't fix and you're left feeling like, actually, can I reverse the harsh techniques that have been used against this horse?
Well, what about the patients? It was like, we can't force, and I don't like to force more patience, but
Mm.
I would, maybe we would like change the question. What is
Mm.
your value? What is your purpose for the horse? How do you want your relationship to be? Because there are
Mm.
people that, and again, that has to do with status. Because owning a horse offers you status. I like, to me, it's so normal. I worked really, really hard to buy my first pony and all that. And to me, it's such a way of life. But sometimes, like, people say to me, "Oh, you have a horse, you must be very rich." Well, we all know we don't
Oh,
have
we've all heard
money.
that one, haven't we? We've all heard that one. No.
So there's this status thing that, like, people who compete with horses, what is their value? Like,
Mm.
what is more important, the horse or the winning?
Yeah.
And what is your purpose? If you have horses that are your employees because they are your riding horses, uh, where's the tipping point that you choose for the horse? Or, like, I think the patience has to do everything with your value. Like, to me, my horses, well, they are my employees because I make training videos with them, but they are kind of lucky because if they don't want to do stuff, I kind of find a way that they want to change their mind on their own. And
Mm.
sometimes I have to say, like, yeah, not today, not today.
Yeah.
So patience is has a lot to do with, what do you really want? Do you want a relationship, or do you
Mm.
want to be getting the results now? Because when I always say, like, put the R of relationship before the R of results. Because once you have that really good relationship, it's amazing what horses will do for you. But if you just want the results and you're trying to get the results without a relationship, yeah, you might have to rely on aversives to make him do it.
That's so interesting, because
So
if we all saw our horses perhaps as pets and as friends and as family members before riding, before sports animal, before competitor, then maybe they would be passed from pillar to post less. Maybe they would stay within families more. It wouldn't be a case of being outgrown. It wouldn't be a case of needing a horse for a higher level of competition. You would add to your herd rather than selling on your herd members, because they are first and foremost members of the family or members of the herds that are staying with you. It changes everything, doesn't it? Just by reevaluating the relationship.
yeah, but we have to be aware that our behavior is as much influenced by our environment as that is for the horse. If we surround ourselves with people that all say we all have to do things we don't like, for us humans, and especially for women, it's very dangerous to be kicked out of our herd, out of our community. So if we are the odd ones that don't want to whip our horses and that wants to build a relationship, it's necessary to have a community with like-minded horse people that you feel safe around, that nobody questions why you have treats in your pocket, that nobody questions that my horse says, we are done riding, so I dismount, and that was it for today. If that's the norm, if that's normal, it makes it so much easier for people to follow their hearts. I've written a blog once where I describe that, because it's the human behavior is so fascinating to me, because the blog name is It All Starts with a Helmet and a Whip. My parents bought a helmet and a whip because that was advised by the riding school. Okay, a helmet to keep your child safe. But a whip is designed to inflict pain without inflicting injury. When I heard that, it was like, that's why you usually don't get open wounds from using a whip. But it still hurts. Beep hurts.
That is what we're all equipped with as we start our journey with horses, or it certainly has been. Hopefully times are changing. But Sandra, when you look ahead to the next few years, what do you hope for horses? You know, you've talked about that many children start being passed a helmet and a whip. What do you hope for the next generation and for horses' lives as we look ahead?
Well, I've seen especially in the UK and in the Netherlands, like the clicker training for horses is, everybody almost seems to have heard of it. Of course, that's my bubble as well, my environment. But like I think it becomes more and more mainstream. That's what I hope. And I know a lot of people, and this podcast contributes so much to awareness and to you don't lose control with positive reinforcement. You have the relationship, and I would say you don't have maybe more control, but since you have the horse on your side, you create better and safer horses.
Yeah.
Because I see so many accidents happen where the root of the cause is miscommunication and misunderstanding. Like if a horse is very fearful and we use our legs and whips to get that horse past that scary thing, well, we immediately have may help make that association: scary thing, whipping; scary thing, pain, instead of scary thing, oh, I go to my owner, or guardian or friend and saying, what do you think?
Yeah.
Oh, you're not scared? Maybe if I get the time to check it out, I'm not scared. But because they tell us, I'm scared, can I have a little bit of time? They won't get over the threshold. They don't get into flight, because flight, fight, or freeze, and the flight and fight state of a horse, that's what causes the accidents so many times. Oh, and since I do positive reinforcement, no horse has ever stepped on my toes again. This is also something like that happened all the time. Like, wear boots because horses step on your toes.
Yeah.
Lean into it. When I stopped doing traditional training, that never happened to me.
Wow, Sandra,
Yeah,
I
that
could
was
talk
just-
to you all day. We've learned not only lessons in horsemanship
My
and
gosh.
training, but life lessons as well. Thank you so much for coming on Curious Equestrian. You're going to stick around for some members only questions and continue the conversation in our membership only zone. But before then, tell the listeners where they can find you for your blog and your training and for any advice.
Well, for your listeners, I will have something special because I do positive reinforcement, and every relationship begins with giving. So you gave me the opportunity to be here, and I want to give something back and something to your listeners. So I will share that. Where can you find me? You can find me at clickertraining.ca. That's my website. I am. You can find me if you Google HippoLogic on. I'm HippoLogic on Facebook, and I'm HippoLogic on YouTube.
And can we ask what you might be sharing with our listeners?
Well, if you want to know, because positive reinforcement training is a skill, and we all know what it's like. If you learn something new, you get stuck, and then maybe you get unstuck. But what I would like to offer you and the listeners is a free clicker training assessment, and that's a free thing. It's a one-on-one Zoom call, and we go over the main things, that the skills that you need to develop. And you can assess yourself. I'm not assessing you. You assess yourself, because it's a self-assessment. I guide you through the process. And at the end of the assessment, you know exactly what the weak spots in your training are, the holes in your training, or where you need to focus on.
Amazing.
It's not
Thank
a
you
sales
so
call.
much.
If you do want to know
Oh,
how I can help you, you can always ask. But yeah, and it's very fun to do. Yeah.
thank you so much for your generosity, for your kindness. For those listeners who want to make the most of that opportunity, please do reach out to Sandra in all the ways that she just listed, the ways to find her on her social media and her website. Thank you so much, Sandra, for that. Stick around because you're going to be answering some membership questions. But for now, thank you so much for coming on Curious Equestrian. Thank you so much for listening to and watching Curious Equestrian. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube so that you don't miss an episode and all that's coming your way, or you can subscribe to us on whatever podcast platform you listen. If you could leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, that would really help us to find lots more lovely listeners. And you can also follow us on Instagram at Curious Equestrian Podcast. We'll see you next time.